Welcome to This Endorian Life, a Star Wars podcast from the Radio Meanwhile Network. My name is Steve Rudd.
I'm Nick Gunning, and this week our journey through Star Wars Vintage takes us to the 2014 animated series, Star Wars Rebels.
Rebels. Today, in celebration of its 10th anniversary.
Wild.
I know. We will be covering the two-part series premiere, Spark of the Rebellion, which originally aired on October 3rd, 2014. 10 I had to look it up because I was like, wait, no way.
Yeah.
No, it's
I know.
not. And it is 10 years ago, man.
Yeah. I gotta say, I was watching this. I watched it with my son, and he was like, "Oh, Rebels, why are we watching this?" And I was like, "Oh, Steve and I are going to talk about it on This Endorian Life." And he was like, "Dad, you're slipping a little bit because you're not even talking about Ewoks anymore. You're just talking about whatever random Star Wars thing." I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong. You know, it's a good.
It's true. Yeah,
it's a good note. It's a good note for sure. But yeah, 10 years. And this episode was directed by Stephen Lee and Stuart Lee. It was written by Simon Kinberg, who is known, I know him primarily for his work in Fox's X-Men movies. So he produced quite a few of them, but he also wrote the screenplays for X-Men The Last Stand, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix. So a lot of X-Men. And even one of those X-Men movies is even good. So, you know, it's not...
Wait, which one?
Days of Future Past.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. I really like that one.
It's
I
so
really
good.
like that one. Apocalypse was, I don't know, it was weird. I thought Poe was not, he was just weird.
Yeah.
Dark Phoenix was not the movie that I feel like everyone was asking for.
If I had to, I mean, two of those movies are just retellings of the Dark Phoenix saga. X-Men Last Stand and Dark Phoenix are just the Dark Phoenix saga.
They're basically, yeah.
But
same thing.
I would take Dark Phoenix over Apocalypse. I think X-Men Apocalypse is the worst X-Men movie.
It was really bad, man.
It was rough. I remember watching it in theaters, and it was like 15 minutes in, and I'm looking at my watch being like, oh no. Oh, no. And then
15 minutes. Oh, man.
It was rough. And I hadn't watched it until Eric and Hillary covered it over on Previously on X-Men. And before their episode, I was like, oh, I got to watch this again. I'm sure I'll like it better the second time. Nope.
No.
Did not like it better. Did not like it better.
No.
So
what's his name as Apocalypse?
Yeah. It was a weird Oscar Isaacs, who I really like Oscar Isaacs. So like
I like him as Poe, and in oh geez, I already
Ex Machina he's good in, and
in Moon Knight. Oh man, he was so good in Moon Knight.
I know.
And in Apocalypse, you throw that in there, and it's just like, all right, we got to do that. Like, you can't judge somebody based on their best work and their worst work. So worst is Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
By far, that's his worst work. I don't know what his best work is. Maybe Poe.
Poe's pretty. I mean, Poe in Force Awakens is pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, in Force Awakens. Yeah. The rest of it, he just kind of.
Yeah. Anywho, a DVD of the first two episodes was released on October 14th, 2014, and the full season was released the following year. I did watch this originally on DVD. I think that I had that DVD with just Spark of the Rebellion as kind of, they put it out sort of like a movie, you know, just like cut into one 45-minute sequence. I think that's how I saw it originally. And then I watched this whole series just on DVD. I was never watching it like live as it came out, but
oh, no way, really?
Yeah, I think when the first season came out on DVD in 2015, I remember getting it because I really liked Spark of the Rebellion. And watched it all the way through, and I was satisfied with this series the whole way.
Yeah, me too. It's funny, I didn't actually watch it on DVD at all. I didn't watch a single frame of the show when it was a show.
Oh, okay.
Like, it had ended, and I was kind of like, I can't even remember what was 2014. Oh, I was working on a drill ship in 2014. I didn't have like time.
Oh,
Netflix.
That's right. Your drill ship days. I remember
my drill ship days. So we were out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and I didn't have internet. I mean, we did, but
crazy
time. Barely send a PDF. So
right.
Yeah, so it's not like I was watching a whole lot of TV, and so I do remember it being out and being like, oh, I feel like I want to watch it, but I just never had time until the show ended, and people were like, yo, it ended so well, and this and that. I'm like, really? Like, it's a kid's show, really? And then I remember watching it and being like, yo, this is so
I know.
good.
I know, and I feel like
oh, man.
it always kind of lived in the shadow of the Clone Wars cartoon.
I think you're right.
You know,
Yeah.
I think people always think, oh, Clone Wars is the best, and then, oh, and also Rebels. But I feel the opposite. Like, Rebels to me is, I loved it. In rewatching it, it didn't lose any of the magic for me. So, spoiler alert, I guess that's my.
Well, it's Rebels just had, I feel like, had better setup in cast.
Oh, sure.
Right? When your show is basically just Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka.
Yeah.
It's just the three of them, right? Pretty
Yeah.
much. And they're all almost kind of the same character. They all have different character traits, but they're like the same character. Whereas Rebels, it's a group of very different people, and it's more compelling and it's more interesting.
Yeah.
I got burned out on Clone Wars.
Same.
I had to circle back, and when everyone was like, "Oh man, that ended really well too," I was like, "Fine."
I've actually never finished Clone Wars, so
maybe you never have?
No, I haven't.
It's good. If it ends, it ends
All
pretty
right.
well.
To your point of how like the cast is so much more expansive. That's true because you have sort of the Jedi training aspect. You have kind of the surrogate family aspect. You have romance. You have so many different configurations. Yeah, where you could tell a good story, and they did. The show was preceded by 4 shorts, so there was 4 little shorts that aired in September of 2014 that kind of introduced you to the characters, a little bit of a lead up, and then it ran for 75 episodes, and it does end on a cliffhanger. And I don't know if it was always intended to end on a cliffhanger, or if they just opted not to make a 5th season. I don't know, but it still feels pretty satisfying to me as an ending. And then. Yeah, but then all of the threads are picked up in the Ahsoka series from last year.
You know what I do remember about the cliffhanger ending? That I remember watching it and being like, I still feel like this ended better than Battlestar Galactica.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, well, you did not set a high bar with that.
No,
so
yeah.
Well, our cast includes Taylor Gray as Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall as Hera Syndulla, Freddie Prinze Jr. as Kanan Jarrus, Tia Secar as Sabine, Steve Bloom as Zeb. Steve Bloom voices Wolverine in quite a lot of things, and you can kind of hear some Wolverine-esque in the Zeb performance.
He voices a lot of things, doesn't he?
He does. Did you know, I'm sure you did, because you're such a dork, but did you know that the Zeb design is based on the original Wookiee design?
Is it really?
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't know that. Is that why the line is in
dork?
There?
Yeah, I think so. So. If you ever look at like
that's baloney for sure.
Yeah. If you ever look at the books of like original concept arts and things, which is very different, Chewbacca's design is like exactly Zeb. So yeah, they kind of dusted that off and used it for this new creature. And yeah, he pretends to be a Wookiee at one point. So there's a lot of like sort of deep cut in jokes to the franchise.
Okay.
You have, let's see, David Oyelowo as Agent Kallus. And then we have some returning actors coming back from other works. So we have James Arnold Taylor, who reprises the Obi-Wan Kenobi voice from Clone Wars and many other things since then. And, of course, you have the one and only James Earl Jones kicking off the show with new dialogue as Darth Vader, which was a pretty cool start.
It's a cool start, though. Here's the thing, though. I feel like that's his weakest performance as Vader. I had forgotten it. I had to look it up. When I heard the voice again, watching through it, I was just like, whoa. Like, is that his voice? Or is that like an AI rendering of his voice? And I went back and looked and I was like, it's him. But you listen to it and it just doesn't. It sounds like it's just poorly recorded, maybe? I don't know. You know?
That's a long stretch in between.
Like, do it from your phone. Do it from your phone, James.
Yeah.
You know, and he just spoke the lines into his phone and then they kind of like Vadered it from that recording.
I mean, I think that's the most extensive Darth Vader dialogue you get since Return of the Jedi, because, you know, he does record some dialogue in Revenge of the Sith, but, you know, to do like a whole speech. So yeah, I did notice too that it was a little like, you know, there was still a little dust to shake off of the Darth Vader
robotic.
voice.
It was very robotic. I don't know. Maybe just how they mixed it or something.
But, you know, he's 30 years older at this point. Jeez. Pretty crazy. But I was still excited to have a new James Earl Jones. And I know Frank Oz does some Yoda in this as well. So, and I think Billy D. Williams' voice is maybe Lando's father. I can't remember. But there's some legacy cast members that show up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Our featured cast member this week is Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs voices the Inquisitor. Outside of Star Wars, he's known for lots of genre roles, but I think of him as Captain Gabriel Lorca from the first season of Star Trek Discovery. Love that character. Did you watch the first season?
I did. You remember him as Lorca? It's funny. I remember him as the bad guy in The Patriot. And wait, no.
Oh.
I did this with my wife too, and she was like, "Really? That's how you remember him? Isn't he isn't he wait, I already forgot his name. He's
Malfoy.
Draco Malfoy's
he's
dad.
Malfoy.
Yeah.
He's Lucius Malfoy. Yes, he is.
He's like one of the most famous guys in this Harry Potter series, and you're like, the first thing you say is, "Oh yeah, I remember him from this bizarre, movie back in 2005 or something like that."
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, yeah, he was so evil. That's how he's even more evil in The Patriot than he is in Harry Potter. Come on."
He's one of those actors who I feel like you drop him into something and it's immediately elevated. Like you're better for having Jason Isaacs in something, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the twists and turns you go through with Lorca in the first season of Star Trek Discovery is probably the best thing that ever happens in Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. The Mirror World Lorca.
Yeah, all the mirror stuff.
Him.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yep. All right, hit me with not uber detailed. Hit me with a DVD synopsis for Rebels
DVDs,
Spark of the Rebellion. Yeah.
The Spark of the Rebellion, Part 1 and 2. It is a dark time. The Jedi are no more, and the Empire rules the galaxy with an iron fist, bringing tyranny to the outer rim world of Lothal. Their ominous presence is a cloud over the planet, squashing any hope of freedom or a better life, especially for 14-year-old orphan Ezra Bridger. But the young con artist soon finds that destiny has other plans for him, as he encounters a small band of rebels who dare to strike back against the Empire. Ooh, I love their word usage there about striking back.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
This is, I looked it up. It's like IBY 5, year 5 or something like that.
It's 5 years before A New Hope and 14 years
Yep.
after Episode 3.
Okay.
So this was kind of, they had not really explored this era officially. You know what I mean? So this was kind of like breaking new ground for Star Wars at the time to really see what was going on. And we get at least one episode with the teenage Leia, which I loved that episode. So it was cool to see that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was kind of in this most interesting of times where it's like, we don't really have a rebellion yet. And, the end of Revenge of the Sith is such a downer that it's like, we're dropped in the middle of that time. So, but I was struck with, I mean, all the sounds, all the visuals. I mean, we start with that Vader and it just kind of go right into the ships and you're just like immersed in the world. Really excellent start, I think.
Oh yeah, it hits right away.
It does.
Right. Yeah. And I think, honestly, I do think the first part is stronger than the second part. I think, I think everything makes sense. How it goes, there's all the silly parts, but like there's a plan. The kind of second half, it kind of becomes a little bit out of control, but they are lucky the way that everything turns out.
Yeah,
notice that.
I think the first half, you're introducing the characters. They're on the run for the Empire. You're trying to figuring out everybody's allegiance, figuring out what's going on with everybody. And by the second part, when they're doing like the Wookiee rescue and everything, that did feel a little dull to me. So I'm glad you said that because I was thinking the same thing.
I was kind of like, whoa, this is like, we successfully did 2 missions by the skin of our teeth. We could totally just go into this one guns a-blazing and not really care. And I was just like, what? Oh, I forgot it was like that. They managed to escape, but it felt like it was a very weak plan. Like, in those movies when they're like, really, that's your plan? Like, that's what you're going to go with,
Yep.
So, but overall, I mean, I think I forgot, right? I even texted you. I was just like, man, I forgot how hard this hits.
I know.
It hits so hard right off the bat. And it's like, whoa, this is so good.
I even love when the title comes up on the screen and you just get like the tail end of the Star Wars theme. I think it's such good use of the music. This is a great soundtrack to listen to all around.
The music, the sounds, all the speeders, like that. Yeah, they nailed it. I think this was at the time. I think this was really peak.
Yeah,
peak Star Wars
Oh,
for a
definitely.
while was the cartoon stuff. Was the
Yeah.
anime. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
Star Wars. Story writing just felt better, seemed better. There was more time to develop characters and
Mhm.
relationships and
But I still hold this up like with Mandalorian as like the best of the Star Wars TV shows. I mean,
yeah.
I really think it's right up there
Well, this
because
is also close to being the same time as Andor. And it's interesting how
Hmm,
watching this, I'd completely forgotten that, like, oh yeah, this is like setting up the rebellion, but so does
yeah,
Andor.
totally different
Yeah.
viewpoints. Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting.
both good.
I think right away, I think Ezra is a good lens character,
Mhm.
and you don't know what he has sort of like a scrappy, like Aladdin kind of vibe when he's like running through the streets,
Yeah.
stealing stuff, messing with stormtroopers and everything. So I think that's a good lens character, and having him be young works, but it never feels like, oh, I'm watching a kiddie show.
I was thinking about that too, though. I was like, I feel like I remember him being younger, but he almost
Yeah,
seems like he's like a 13, 14-year-old. Like he's really
yeah,
not as young as maybe 16-year-old that's just been living by himself.
yeah. I like as we go along and you get the reveal of like Kanan's background as a Jedi and
Yeah.
toying with that a little bit, seeing how he was just a Padawan whose master was killed in Order 66, and he's just like not really doing it, but he has all that training and everything, and Ezra kind of
Yeah.
like awakens something in him. So again, that's great. I mean, Ezra needs a surrogate family because his family is gone, and
Mhm.
Kanan never really got to finish his training, and now Ezra offers this new choice. And like Hera's such a strong like leader for the whole crew. Her
Yeah.
relationship with Kanan, there's lots to play with there. So I don't know. It's just it's an incredibly well structured show, and it probably could have gone on for a lot longer because there's so many different directions you can go.
Yeah. At the time, I remember him being like, this is really entertaining. But now we have two shows. Part of Ahsoka's story from Mandalorian and Ahsoka itself
Yep.
is kind of a continuation of this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It all weaves together like really nicely. Although
Yeah.
it's funny because I still was so into this show, and I did want to know like where light spoilers for the end of Rebels, but like where does Thrawn end up? Where does Ezra end up? Like you don't know these
Yeah.
things, and I did always kind of wonder that. But then when they were bringing it all back and making Ahsoka essentially just like a live action season of Rebels, I was not down for it, and I don't think that show was
Yeah.
executed very well. Like I didn't find that satisfying at all.
I don't think that show knew who it really wanted to center around. And
No.
that was Disney had this weird time where like Kenobi was just really not about Kenobi. He was kind of like a side character in his own show. Ahsoka, it really wasn't about Ahsoka. It was kind of
No,
about Sabine and
she's hardly a main character.
yeah,
She's like a low level supporting character.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if they may as well, I mean, I feel like if they went back and if we could go back a few years when they were deciding what to do with this Ahsoka show and really make it a continuation of Rebels, they probably would have been a little more clear on where the show was going to go beyond season 1. And I
Yeah.
hate that when they do that with shows. They make this like compelling story and it's all about Thrawn and then well, we'll figure out the story second season
Yeah.
then.
I
And it's
know.
just like stop either making a great first season that ends and you're like, "Well, I kind of don't really care about what happens next." Stop doing that and stop making a season that's all about setting up season 2 because you
Yeah.
lost me.
I wonder what it would have been like if they would have just said, you know what, we're doing a live action continuation of Rebels. Because that's essentially what the show was. Like, I wonder if they would have presented it like that, how that would have worked. That being said, like, I would have really enjoyed an Ahsoka series that was actually about Ahsoka dealing with the aftermath of Vader and Anakin and all that. Like, I think that would have been cool to see, but we didn't get either. But I fear we've veered off track.
We have, yeah. Oh, so I think that's lost on so many shows these days that there's never really a plan.
Yeah.
And this, even though it ended the way it does, and we don't really know what, it kind of does leave it on like on a sustained note instead of resolving a chord of a
Yep.
song. It just leaves it open, and you're like, it was done well rather than it felt like a cheat or a cop out that like, oh, you just don't want to finish it, so you're going to leave
Yeah.
us like that, or there was an intention to finish it, but it just ended up being so bad that somebody in the office cut it off. But I still remember it being on a kind of a high note how it ended, and I was just like, oh, all right.
Yeah, there's lots of loose threads, but it's not unsatisfying, I don't think.
Yeah,
I think you're like, wow, I wonder what would have happened. You know what I mean? But you're not like, oh no, we'll never know. And I think what this pilot episode does is it hits you hard. You're just like, boom, 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 adventure, 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 character, character, character. And it all kind of lands. And then we have, the Wookiee story, which doesn't quite maintain the same level of intensity, but gives you sort of a sense of like, this is how this group is going to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you like a nice push to go forward, where there's the question of like, is Ezra gonna accept being a part of this group? Is he gonna want to pursue like these latent force powers that are showing up?
Right?
Yeah.
Like it is kind of wild that like I forgot that he was kind of like, all right, well, it was nice to meet you guys. I'm gonna take my crate and get out of here. And they're like,
right.
Whoa, this is how you think this is gonna go? And he's just like, I forgot that he did seem meaner and more like he really didn't want to be a part of their lives at all.
Yeah.
And even when like, I don't know, the shit was hitting the fan, he was still kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to save that person. I don't know him. I don't really care. And
Hera's unusual. Like, it's unusual.
Yeah.
So I think that's a strong way to start it, because like his ambivalence when you're expecting that character to be like the plucky, like, yeah, let's be heroes, but he's kind of like, it's unusual, and I think that's a good.
Zeb, even when he gets snatched, I forgot this. Zeb lies about how he was taken.
Yeah,
and you realize that like he actually did feel kind of bad about it. That's why he lied.
Yeah,
he could have just said like, "Nah, they snatched him up, and then we had to go."
Yeah.
Like he could have just been honest, but he was like, "Nah, they, like they got him." And and it was like it was bad, or I can't remember how he said it.
Yeah,
but
he doesn't acknowledge that it was kind of like a tactical decision. Yeah, true.
Yeah, because I mean they were already kind of like on their way out.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Chopper, who I think is a great addition to like the droid world. His vocalizations are unique, and it just. It's a different energy. He's kind of like a more of a plucky sidekick than some of the others have been. And I think it manages to be unique, but still feel very much like, it's a Star Wars droid. That's how they roll. So, I think it's just such a strong cast. We're talking good, so let's stick with it. What's your Ichiwawa moment?
The first thing I thought of, it just starts out kind of like Star Wars does, where you're like, I don't know what's going on, but the ship's shooting at that ship, and now they're boarding them. And that guy looks bad.
It drops you in nicely. Yeah,
it drops you in to something going on. I think it took me, even though I'd seen the show, I remember being like, I don't know who I like yet. And I think that was really good about the show, that there was never like okay, we're definitely supposed to like Kanan.
Yeah.
We're definitely supposed to. And it was just like, not really, right? I mean, like, well, maybe you like Hera. Oh, okay, well, maybe Sabine or maybe Ezra. Like, I don't think it's till like a couple episodes in can you really develop like a real love for a specific character in the show, because they kind of leave everyone open-ended in a way. And I like that. I like that about the show. They just hit so hard and so good.
It's a true ensemble, It's
a true ensemble, and I forgot how much it works. It works.
I know.
I've deprived myself of it for years because it's not the first time I've done that too.
Yeah.
But like, it's I don't know. There is a difference between binging something and waiting week to week. I feel like you do grow to love characters more when you have to wait.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I look back, this show's pretty highly rated for me in all of the Star Wars shows. The voices are good.
Mm-hmm.
Ezra, it's actually funny. I feel like Ezra is like the weakest character.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my blanket. I think as a whole, this is such a successful launch to a Star Wars show, right? I think the next best one in line is probably Mandalorian for me. That launched so hard.
It is a strong start.
Clone Wars was basically just a continuation of episode 2.
Yep.
So it's just like a continuation of that, which I mean serves its purpose, but I think it served its purpose probably 3 seasons too long. They should have made it shorter. But this show just did. I don't know, man. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it over again. I'm gonna repeat myself. I'm gonna go in circles. It just this show, my Ichiwawa moment is remembering just how good this show starts out.
Okay.
And that's such a rare thing these days.
I'll accept that. This was the first Star Wars production without George Lucas being involved.
Really?
Which is another noteworthy thing about it, that it does have the vibe so strongly. But obviously, Dave Filoni working with Lucas so closely on Clone Wars and everything, it makes sense. But
they still wanted Star Wars to be Star Wars at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
At least some people did.
So I don't disagree with anything you said. I think an argument could be made that, just revisiting it is in itself an Ichiwawa. But there's a little moment towards the end where Kanan pops the lightsaber and he's being pursued by Agent Kallus, and he rescues Ezra and the little Wookiee. And then Kallus gets like knocked away, and he and a stormtrooper are like dangling from like the side of this thing. And the stormtrooper is just like, "Is that the first time you've ever seen a Jedi in real life?" And Kallus just kicks him off. And the stormtrooper's like, "Ah!" I just thought that was so funny because it's almost slapsticky. It's such a funny little moment. So that really stood out to me. Do you have a negative?
I think the whole Ezra's look really was a negative for me. It took me so long to get over his eyes and hair and not getting over his age. I think that was difficult for me, and that's that's me being picky.
I get that. Sometimes the character design really throws it off. I do like this look better than his later like buzz cut look.
Oh, geez, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's a rough time.
What about you? Was your Okavark?
I think it is kind of the Wookiee portion.
That's weak. That was
it's weak, and it doesn't quite like. I wish that was more that thread was kind of going through the whole thing, because in some ways it doesn't feel like a true 2-part episode. It feels kind of like 1.5 plus the Wookiee story. I just think if that would have been integrated a little bit more, that would have been kind of cool. I did think it was cool to see the Wookiee ship, and I was trying to decide if we've ever seen a Wookiee ship before. Probably in Revenge of the Sith, right? Because they go to Kashyyyk.
I don't think we see any of our ships. I think we just see their assault vehicles.
Okay. There's like a Wookiee ship docked with the Ghost, and I was kind of like, well, at least that's kind of cool to see, like what a Wookiee ship design looks like. But yeah, I just think that story is not great. So
yeah,
I thought of a bonus Okavark, and that is when the Wookiees are handcuffed, Ezra sneaks in and unhandcuffs them, and then the Wookiees spring to action and take out the stormtroopers, and I'm like, you probably. Just because they have handcuffs doesn't mean they can't take out. You know what I mean? Just like swing those big arms. You know what I mean?
Too. I was like,
they're just standing there.
Nobody's looking.
They're just powerless. They're just like, oh, my hands are cuffed. So I guess, in a gentleman's agreement, you win.
That civilization built a spaceship? Really?
I guess.
That's
what we're.
It's funny. I did think of that too, that it was just like, they wrote that in that like Ezra got all the way around.
Yeah.
Uncuffed them, and then they took charge.
Then they took action. Yeah, I thought that was kind of like cartoon logic there, and it was the only time that I really noticed that, where it was like, well, this is silly. This doesn't make sense. It felt a little bit like when Flea and the others are chasing like Baby Leia and Alderaan and Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, surely 4 grown men can catch this child, but no.
Yeah,
cartoon logic. How many Yub Nubs?
I don't know. I think I'd give this one a solid like 4.5, probably close to 4.75, just because it's for the little Okavarks, like it was a 2-parter. Like, if it's just the first part, man, this is, brilliant. Everything about it, the slow introduction of the Inquisitors, the introduction of Kallus and seeing his character, I guess really kind of evolves into his character more in the second part.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good 4.5, close to 4.75. What about you?
I think I would give the whole series a 5. I think.
Oh, the whole series. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think for this episode,
peak Star Wars.
Yeah, I would go 4.5, just because what's good is good and what's bad, just like you're saying. It's just kind of like, man, whatever. So
there are funny things like that though, right? Like when Ezra is trying to escape the city in Lothal, I remember this time thinking like, where do you think you're gonna go? Like you just gonna go to your house and then just be like, well, they won't find me out here. The only structure for like, like 100 clicks. Like, come on, dude.
That's true. But still, I was delighted to revisit it. It is currently streaming on Disney Plus. I have the DVDs on the shelf in my basement stairwell. So if anybody wants to borrow those, just let me know. But no, really, really, really happy to watch it again. Next time we'll be back on Endor for real. This time we said we were going to cover Ewoks number 12, the Thorn Monster, and then we pivoted to talk James Earl Jones. But the Thorn Monster will happen next time right here on This Endorian Life.
I'll see you then.
Okay.
This Endorian Life is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include 9021 Here We Go, 90s Music Got Me Like, and Previously on X-Men. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook or X at Endorian Life. And please rate, subscribe, and share the show wherever you get your podcasts.
Boom.
Oh, yeah. Stay classy, Star Wars fans.